This is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. You're listening to OutBüro Voices, where we're bringing you conversations with LGBTQ community leaders, LGBTQ professionals, and entrepreneurs. And in that category, we are today chatting with Ben Finzel. He is a PR and communication specialist with years and decades in that industry. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello, and thank you very much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. How about we jump right in, Ben, and you give us a little bit of a history of Renew PR and your career.
Sure. Well, I'll start with my personal history first, I guess. It's everything that we do in our business lives is informed by who we are and where we came from. So if you don't mind, I'll start there. I was thinking about, talking with you and sort of what to focus on because you have such a wide, range of things to talk about in terms of OutBüro and all the various ways that all of us professionals who are part of OutBüro might be helpful to each other in building our businesses. So I thought about three key events that kind of shaped my life and who I am and sort of helped me get to this point. The first one is I'm a DC native. So I was born in Washington, DC, which most folks can't say. And growing up here in the nation's capital really shaped my worldview and instilled in me an interest in history. I was a history major in college, politics, current events. It also gave me, believe it or not, given the times we're living in right now, a strong sense of justice and of right and wrong. And that's really shaped my sense of fair play and ethical business practices, which has been really helpful as I've built the business. The second thing is that despite growing up in DC and being a DC native, I went to high school and college in Texas, which no one ever believes when they meet me. I don't have an accent. They look at me and they don't think Texas. So growing up in DC and then moving to Houston and then to Lubbock, which is, at least at the time, was referred to as the buckle of the Bible Belt, was really important and informative for me. I think folks say you either love it or you hate it. And I loved it. It was terrific. And living in Texas got me out of that kind of DC East Coast bubble and gave me a different perspective. And that different perspective has been really helpful in terms of how I've approached business, how I've approached my life. It's given me a sense of how to tackle problems and how to consider different points of view, which is really important in communications and in business. And then the third one, sort of, I guess, the most obvious, given that this is OutBüro, is that I'm gay. And I came out at a time when being out in the workplace was not so common, not so friendly, and maybe just a little bit scary. And when I did come out, my friends all said, I didn't just come out, I busted the door down. It was sort of an all or nothing proposition for me. So I marched for rights. I went to the 93 March for Rights in Washington, D.C., because I live here. I attended protests. And I was, in my own way, really thinking about how to be an activist and an advocate for LGBT people in my industry, in communications and public affairs in Washington. And that has also really shaped how I built my career and what I focused on in my career over the last 30 years.
Okay, very interesting. And no detection of Texas accent, but that's been a year or two ago. I get that too. So people will be not quite sure where I'm from, and I say, well, born and raised in Florida, but I've lived in Germany for 6 years, New York, DC, LA, Vegas, Ohio. And by the time it's kind of and then I've watched a lot of HGTV and Food Network, and I guess that's where or on clients with Canadians, I sometimes do this thing of pronouncing my house and out more like Canadian.
About
house out. It's just more natural for me. I
Sorry.
don't know why. Yeah, not quite that bad, but definitely when it's house and out, boy, I just go right there. And interestingly, I've had people say recently that I have a bit of a Southern accent, and okay, I guess I don't hear it, but isn't that the point, right? No one quite hears their own accent. So
you're continental. That's what you should say.
Yes, there we go. That sounds much better. So very interesting. Now, did you attend college? To get a degree in communications? Was that kind of, you knew from the outset that that's what you wanted to do?
No, not at all. Actually, my degree is in history. I thought about majoring in public relations. Actually, I took some courses, but it would have required staying in school an additional year to get the right courses because of when they were available. And that seemed really stupid to me, to stay in school another year for a major. So I just took the courses I liked and got a degree in something that would be of interest to me, that turned out helped me, learn how to think and how to evaluate and how to really develop an argument. So the history degree was really helpful. I had no thought that I would go into PR as a business until after I left Capitol Hill. I was working on Capitol Hill. That's really what I wanted to do. And then when I left Capitol Hill and started looking around for a job, one of my interviews was with someone I had been an intern for, and he was working at Edelman. And this was in the early 90s. So Edelman was a much smaller firm, and he hired me at Edelman. So my career in PR was almost, I'm tempted to say accidental, but I guess in life there are no accidents, but providential. I think I landed where I was supposed to. It was terrific experience. I still have lifelong friends to this day that I made working at Edelman, and it was a great experience. And because it was a much smaller firm, I got a lot more out of it, I think, than maybe I would now, because, I met everybody, and, I knew the Edelmans, and even though I was a mid-level staffer, it was a terrific opportunity, and I'm really glad that that's how my career started.
All right. And, careers are, to your point, really ebb and flow, aren't they? It's very rare that someone, completely and wholly has a plan, at 16 to 18 years old, what they want to do for the rest of their life, by the time they retire, and it just ticks the box all the way through, right? Very, very, very rare. And it is really about opportunities and taking opportunistic chances and growing from there.
Oh, totally. And to your point, at various points along the way, as a child and a teenager, I wanted to be a bus driver, a pilot, an architect, and maybe one other, I'm trying to remember, maybe one other thing. And those were based on life experiences. I would take the bus to visit my grandfather. I would take the plane to visit my grandmother. I liked drawing house plans, so none of those things happened. And here I am as a public relations professional. So yes, it is interesting where life takes you and how that kind of works. And I was not one of those people who had a master plan. When I was in college, I remember having a conversation with my father about what to major in and what I wanted to do. And I wasn't quite sure. And he said, well, why don't you get a degree in something that interests you, and the rest will take care of itself. And I said, I can do that. And he said, yes. And I said, okay. So I got the degree in history, and I determined pretty quickly that I wanted to move back to Washington, and I wanted to work on Capitol Hill. So I did that. And because it was, shall we say, several decades ago, in a much simpler time, I was able to literally walk the halls of Congress and go door to door looking for a job. I can't imagine anyone doing that now.
No.
Yeah, but I had the opportunity, and I took it, and here we are. So yeah, ebbs and flows, and you never know where life might take you.
So your father gave you really great advice, because it really is about that critical thinking.
It used to be that you would pitch a reporter by picking up the phone and calling them. And there were only certain times of the day you could do that because they had deadlines at the end of the day. So you would never pitch a reporter past, 2:00 at the latest. And ideally only in the morning, which would make it very difficult. Couldn't get it done in the morning. You had to wait till the next day. Well, now most reporters prefer, unless you know them really well, and you're just sort of having a casual conversation. Most reporters prefer email. In some cases, text. I have pitched reporters over direct message on Twitter, but they prefer email. And I sometimes email reporters late afternoon because deadlines are different now. Deadlines are all over the place. And with the 24/7 news cycle, people can file stories that will appear online on a newspaper or radio or hours before they appear in print or on air. So it's a completely different scape in terms of the media engagement. And then thinking about clients, I remember the first time, it was about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the first time I had a client where I consciously realized I was the oldest person in the room. So the board of directors of the client and the client team and all of the other consultants were all younger than me. And that was a real kind of mind-blowing experience. I don't feel that old. And some would say I don't act that old. It was a real sort of turning of the tables, if you will, to realize that I was older. It was a little bit like that. Some days, a little bit like that scene in Fried Green Tomatoes where Kathy Bates is trying to get a parking space, and these two young girls in a Volkswagen are trying to get it, and Kathy has this huge like Cadillac or something convertible, and she scoots into the spot, and the girls yell at her, and Kathy says, "I'm older and I have more insurance."
Funny. You were older and probably had a lot more wisdom. Experience.
I like to think so. Not always sure I do, but I like to think so.
Right. And one thing that really captured my attention, well, one, you're in communications and press, which is great. Who can't use more of that? But also, I really connected with your focus on the environment and sustainability. Could you tell us a little bit more about Renew PR from, kind of that perspective, your focus?
Sure. So I started Renew PR 5 years ago. We are a national public affairs communications firm in Washington, D.C. And I started the firm because I really wanted to create opportunities to work for the kinds of clients that I was really most interested in, and because I wanted to be able to do the work. What I found as I built my PR career is I was getting higher and higher up the ladder, moving into more senior positions. And my job was less about practice of public relations and more about the practice of administration and, running a business, which is kind of fun, I have to say, and also building business, getting new clients, et cetera. I love that part, but I also like doing the work. And I found that I had less and less opportunity to do the work. So the best way I could think of to kind of square that circle was to go into business for myself, where I get to do the business development and run a business, but I also get to do the work. And I get to work with people and collaborate with people that I really enjoy. And it was the best thing I could have done. I'm having a terrific time. I think part of the reason for that is that I really sat down as I built a business plan and looked at what made the most sense in terms of where I should focus my business. So if you know me at all, and some people do, most people don't, you know me as an energy, environment, public affairs person. That's been my whole career in Washington. I've done a large amount of LGBTQ communications work as well, but really my professional career, at least when I was starting the business 5 years ago, was really rooted in energy environment. So the thought process for me was I should go where I'm known, and I should try to build from what I'm known for. I really love the idea of also doing LGBT, but I thought it had been a number of years since I'd really been in that space, and I felt like I was probably old news and would no longer be relevant in terms of doing LGBT-specific communications work. So I thought I'm just going to focus on the energy environment, and we'll see what happens. And if there are opportunities along the way to start getting back into the LGBT space, I can do that as well. So that's what I did. And that's where I started. And, I found that, first of all, the advice I got from a colleague, which was to focus on a specific segment, right? And to be able to say very succinctly what you do, that advice was golden. Because I was able to start building the business around that principle. If people ask me what I did, I said, it's an energy, environment, public affairs firm. Oh, okay. And if they wanted to know more, I could keep going. But if all I got out was that, at least it was a very clear statement of principle of what I do and where I'm focused. And that was really clear and simple for folks. And what I found was I would say that, and I would get hired to do other work. One does not limit the other. And what I also found that if you're old enough, you have a big enough network, a lot of people, you can get referrals. And I have built my entire business on referrals, on former clients coming back to work with me again, and word of mouth, which I think is remarkable. When I talk to colleagues who also own small, medium-sized PR firms, they say the same thing. Very consistent, how they've done it, and that's how they're doing it. But as I was building the business, people like Bob Wittick, who is I refer to as the father of modern gay PR. So Bob and his business partner, Wes Combs, started Wittick Combs Communications in, I think, 1993, was really the first modern gay PR firm. And they really invented, I think, others might say that others were involved, and they were, but I really think Bob and Wes invented modern gay PR. And Bob's a friend and has been a mentor and a colleague and just a trusted ally. And Bob has referred business to me, which is amazing, and really helped get me back into the LGBT com space where I had been, before working at FleishmanHillard and elsewhere. That's kind of how that evolution happened. So, now we're at the point 5 years later where it's an energy environment and LGBTQ communications firm. And
Okay.
that's the work that I do.
So would you, just out of curiosity, would you also take on new clients who were maybe an upstart business that had a sustainability focus? Like maybe they weren't in energy, but they had that kind of a focus. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you for asking. Yes. In fact, I am specific about how I define energy environment in that I am very broad. So I'm specific and broad. So when I talk about energy environment, I talk about energy efficiency. I talk about renewable energy. I talk about sustainability and climate change. I talk about clean transportation. I talk about natural resources. I talk about all of those sort of broader, air and water and land use, all of those broader issues that would fall under, quote, energy and environment. And in fact, a fair amount of the work I do is the topics I work on are related to sustainability and climate change. And I love that kind of work. And it's so fascinating and so relevant right now to where the national conversation is. And increasingly, as we start to have a conversation about the impact of climate change, for example, on various parts of society, or the need for an understanding of sustainability as a business practice as opposed to just some sort of nice to do marketing ploy, right? The more we talk about that, the more we realize that segmenting audiences and looking, for example, at the impact of climate change on communities of color, or, the role that LGBT people have had in the environmental community. There are some brave souls who have been both, fierce environmental advocates and also LGBTQ leaders. And so the more those stories start to converge, the more interesting it gets, and the more relevant the kinds of things I can do, the more relevant that work is. So I think it's fascinating, and I love what I do, and I'm really fortunate that I get a chance to work on those kinds of topics.
So Ben, you brought up a really good point, and that is you started your business kind of, I wouldn't say after a career because you're still in your career, but you did already have 10 or 15 years or so, if I'm not mistaken.
25.
Whoa, okay. So 25 years working in that field with those particular customers and clients. So you had a nice, to coin an old school term, a nice Rolodex.
Yeah.
Of contacts in which to, and people who already knew you, knew your quality of work, knew your focus, and so forth. So that's kind of an ideal way to start a business. Is
exactly.
Boom. Wow. So in starting your business, have you had any kind of difficulties or maybe interesting things happen that you weren't quite expecting?
Sure. I think if you say no, you either haven't been in business that long or you're really just not being honest. I think we've all, this is always a interesting, I don't want to use the word journey because that's such an overused term, but there's lots of ups and downs and things that take you in directions you wouldn't expect. But it's really an amazing ride, I have to say. And for me, I think, when I started, I had a couple sort of big concerns. I'd say first, I was worried that there was not enough business out there. I had been doing this, to your point, for more than 2 decades, and I knew where the business was and I knew what the market was like. And, there's this finite amount of work. And wow, how am I going to, as a new person hanging out a shingle, and there are many, many, many of us in Washington that do that, how am I going to get this business when it's already, taken? What I didn't realize that there's a whole lot of work out there that you don't know about when you're at a big firm. There's a whole lot of referrals, word of mouth. This person knows 2 people and they call on that person. I didn't know that until I started doing it. So clearly, even though I thought I knew everything about this market, I'm so smart. No, I did not. I was not. There's a lot more work out there. It's not pie. There's enough for everybody. You still have to do good work, and you still have to market yourself, and you still have to be active and engaged and proactive about being out there. But there are opportunities that you can develop. And I didn't realize that. I also was really, I'll say, scared of the business aspects like billing and invoicing. Having been an executive at lots of PR firms, I know all about budgeting. I know all about, the billing that you do, and then you pass it off to someone in another city, and they're the ones who send the bill out, do all the accounting and all that stuff. I had never had to worry about making all the math work and, QuickBooks, etc. So that part was that was the last hurdle I had to get over. And what I realized was, one, QuickBooks is really bad. Sorry. Two, that shouldn't stop you from starting a business. Shout out to the people at FreshBooks. No, I don't get paid, but that's the software platform I use. It's terrific. And what I learned was, even if you don't feel that you're the most comfortable at all of that mechanical math, shall we say, and all of that part of the business, there are technologies out there, all kinds of different things you can use that will help make your business successful. And then third, I wasn't sure what the marketplace would be like in terms of welcoming a new entrant. And I was really used to, as much as I loved the agencies I worked at and I had a wonderful experience, big PR agencies are kind of cutthroat, right? And when you're looking at your colleagues at other firms, they're competitors. They're not really colleagues. So that's the worldview that I had, having been in PR for several decades. So, starting my own firm and entering the marketplace in a different way, although it's a national PR firm and I have national clients and I have big, Fortune 100 companies, et cetera, I'm still in a different space than those firms that have hundreds of employees. What I learned was there's a big world out there with lots of agencies my size and smaller or larger, that all work together and support each other, and who view the industry, as I said before, it's not pie. There's enough work for all of us, and we all work together and support each other. And I had no idea that existed, and it was really affirming. So, those moments when you go after a piece of business and you lose it, and you're disappointed, you have folks to lean on. Even though in my case, my firm has one employee, me. And then I have a huge network of people I work with. And then I have a team of 5 colleagues that I pull in when I need to. So even though I'm fairly small, I've got a lot of resources to pull on. And I did not know that was there. That was a real learning, So you walk in with lots of assumptions, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they aren't. So in my case, there was a lot of learning to do there in that first year. I think what I figured out was there's lots of different paths to success. The trick is finding the one that works for you, and then understanding that it's not going to be a straight line, that you're going to come up with great ideas on how to build a business, and you're going to try them, and some of them are going to work and some aren't. So you drop those and you come up with new ones, and you just keep going. It's about thinking that you can do this and that you have enough trust in yourself that you're going to figure it out. And then also that you don't know everything, and you probably never will, but you're going to learn along the way and grow and adapt and adjust. And that's kind of what makes it fun.
I could not agree more. It is what makes it fun.
The one other thing I'll say, just thinking about the question, and I know we have to wrap up, but the one other thing that I'll add, I really, as I was building my business, I didn't necessarily do a SWOT analysis, but really thinking about what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a national firm that could work on all kinds of different projects. I also wanted to be really intentional about building out a business that way. But I also wanted to be really honest that as I was starting, it's me. I don't have a fleet of 25-year-old account executives sitting in a room somewhere that I just sort of call on. It's me. So if you hire, you're getting me, I'm doing the work. But if you hire me and you want more than that and you need a national footprint, et cetera, I want to be able to do that. So I was really thoughtful about how I was going to market myself and what I was going to do to address both the challenge and the opportunity of building a business. So I did a couple things. One, I built out a network. So I have a network of agencies that I work with. These are trusted partners I've worked with over my whole career. I can call on them. I can build as big a team as I need to. If Coca-Cola calls and wants to hire me for something, I can start tomorrow. At the same time, I've got a team of 5 colleagues I can call on who can do very high level, senior level experience work like I do for a number of clients. I work with them on a regular basis. So I wanted to be really clear about that. I also wanted to really think about how to differentiate myself in the marketplace. There's a lot of folks that do energy, environment, public affairs, communications work in Washington. There's a lot of really good folks, very smart, very connected. There isn't just the one, right? I ain't it. There's a lot of us. So how do you set yourself apart? So I determined really early on that I wanted to get certified as an LGBT business enterprise by the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I did that in, I think, my second or third month of business, maybe. I turned in the forms, and so I got certified in the first 6 months of my business. I have been certified ever since then. You can go to NGLCC.org if you want more information. But that's, for me, a big differentiator, because you're looking at different firms, you're thinking about who to hire. I've got the skills, the expertise, the experience, the connections, just like lots of other people. But oh, by the way, I also have this differentiator in that I am a certified LGBT business. And that sets me apart. That demonstrates that I have a slightly different worldview, a slightly different set of experiences, slightly different set of connections, and a slightly different set of abilities, because I'm able to do more than just the energy environment work. So I was determined that that was going to be really important. The second thing I did was really think about how to build out the LGBT work, building on that certification. So I mentioned before Bob Wittick. Bob was really helpful in referring business to me, and all of my contacts and connections, from decades of doing this, were helpful as well. So I started really developing business in that space. I started engaging with my PR colleagues. I'm in the Counselors Academy of PRSA, which is one of the sections of the Public Relations Society of America. And I met other colleagues who also own agencies, my peers, basically. And from that came the germ of an idea that has become the Change Agency, which is the first national network of independent PR firms focused on multicultural and LGBTQ communication. We're 6 firms, and we're located in markets across the country. And we are owned and operated by people in the Asian American, African American, Hispanic, or LGBTQ communities. We have been doing work engaging audiences in those communities for decades. And we have all banded together under the Change Agencies, which is at thechangeagencies.com. And we are putting ourselves out there to work with clients and really help them tackle communications challenges affecting all 4 of those audiences, just 1, just 2, whatever it might be. And that was another way to really build out my business so that I have more opportunities, more facets, if you will, that can be applicable to someone else and to lots of different clients. And then the third one was how I put myself out there in the marketplace in a way that is both demonstrative of the work I do and my expertise, but also helpful and trying to build out opportunities for others. So one of the things that I really determined working with colleagues is we got a long way to go in terms of building out diversity in this industry. There's always the jokes about all the gay men in PR, et cetera. But most of us, gay men, gay women, LGBTQ people, are not in senior leadership positions in industries. We're starting to be a little bit, but there is still a pink ceiling. And there is still a glass ceiling for women. There is a glass, or whatever ceiling you want to call it, for people of color in this industry. So my little attempt to do something about that is called DC Family Communicators. It is a professional networking group for LGBTQ communications professionals in Washington. I run it. I volunteer to do it. It's built on an idea that Jim Brahms and Drew Plant in Atlanta started like almost 20 years ago, called Atlanta Family Communicators. And it's taking their model of engaging with comms people who are gay in that market and doing the same thing in DC. So we have networking events and happy hours. Now they're all virtual. We have a job board on Facebook and LinkedIn, private groups where we can network, where people can help find jobs, where people can find mentors, et cetera. That's my little opportunity and my little attempt to try to make our industry more diverse and bring more people into it and help our folks find jobs so that we make this industry more reflective of, in as many ways as possible, more reflective of the society it serves. So those kinds of marketing, if you will, constructs really helped me build out the firm and build out the business. And, not only are they a lot of fun and they give me a chance to work with people that I really respect and care about, they're also putting me and my business out there in a different way that helps build business and build opportunity.
Absolutely. You're doing some great stuff there. Awesome to hear. Well, we've had a great conversation, Ben. I much appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a delight.